Sarah looks up at the small crowd gathered around her, her parents, Jenny the photographer, and the wedding planner, who is now speaking urgently into her headset. Finally, her eyes meet her father's. "Dad, go. I'll call Michael and explain. Jenny can drive you. But..." Sarah Matthews, that dog has been by your side through everything. Through your first heartbreak, through college finals, through your grandmother's passing. He was there when you met Michael, and he's been there every step of the way. You don't abandon family when they need you. Tears well in Sarah's eyes as she hugs her father. Thank you. Jenny helps Sarah gather her skirts and leads her to her car while Max follows slowly, pressing against Sarah's legs whenever possible. Sarah's mother, after a moment's hesitation, jumps into action. "I'll handle the guests. Wedding planner, contact the reception venue." The drive to the veterinary clinic is tense. Sarah sits in the back, with Max's head in her lap, her wedding dress spread around them like a cloud. She keeps one hand on his chest, monitoring his breathing, while the other strokes his graying muzzle. "Remember when you first got him? He was such a handful. He ate my favorite shoes the first week, and my mum's garden gloves, and that awful hat my aunt gave me for Christmas. He did you a favor there." They arrive at the clinic in record time. Dr. Peterson is waiting at the door, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of Sarah in her wedding dress, but saying nothing as he helps Max inside. The examination seems to take forever. Sarah paces the small room, her dress rustling with each turn, while Jenny sits quietly in a chair, occasionally checking her phone and updating the others. Dr. Peterson returns, his face grave. He asks Sarah to sit down. Sarah's knees go weak, and Jenny is immediately at her side, helping her to a chair. Dr. Peterson explains that Max has developed a cardiac condition. From the tests they've just run, it appears he's in the early stages of heart failure. The stress and excitement of today likely exacerbated his symptoms. Sarah, in disbelief, mentions that Max was fine just a few days ago. Dr. Peterson explains that these conditions can progress rapidly, especially in older dogs. Max, being 13, has already exceeded the average lifespan for his breed. Sarah, reflecting on Max's actions, notes that he blocked her from walking away. Dr. Peterson confirms that dogs are incredibly intuitive, and that Max knew he needed help, trusting Sarah the most in the world. Sarah asks what they can do, and Dr. Peterson mentions starting Max on medication right away. While it won't cure the condition, it can help manage the symptoms and make him more comfortable. However, given Max's age and the severity of the condition, they are likely looking at months rather than years. Tears spill over Sarah's cheeks as Jenny squeezes her hand tightly. Sarah insists that she needs to stay with Max. Jenny tries to comfort her, but Sarah explains that when she adopted Max, she made him a promise to always be there for him, just like he's always been there for her. Sarah then asks if they can start the treatment now. The next hour is a blur of activity. Dr. Peterson administers the first round of medication while explaining the treatment plan in detail. Sarah sits on the floor next to Max's bed, her wedding dress spread around her like a protective cocoon, listening intently and taking notes on her phone. Sarah's phone buzzes with a text from Michael, asking how Max is. Sarah replies that it's not good, mentioning heart failure, and apologizes about the wedding. Michael quickly responds, telling her not to apologize and that he's on his way. 20 minutes later, the clinic door opens, and Michael walks in, still in his tuxedo, with his best man Kevin right behind him. Sarah looks up from her place beside Max, makeup streaked with tears, hair falling out of its careful arrangement, and wedding dress wrinkled beyond repair. She apologizes to Michael, but he reminds her of what he said when he proposed, that he wanted to marry her because she has the biggest heart of anyone he's ever met, loving deeply and without reservation. He reassures her that the wedding can wait, and that what matters is that they are together. Michael reaches out to scratch behind Max's ears, and the old dog's tail thumps weakly against the floor. Kevin mentions that they might have an idea, and Jenny reveals that they've been making calls. The minister said he'd be happy to come to the clinic and their parents are on board. It wouldn't be the wedding they planned, but they could get married there. Sarah looks around the examination room, then down at Max, who is watching her with loving eyes. She asks if it's really possible. Michael assures her that it's only if she wants to, and they can also wait and reschedule everything. Sarah decides that it's perfect, noting that Max has been there for every important moment in their relationship, and should be there for this too. 2 hours later, Sarah Matthews marries Michael Anderson in the waiting room of Riverside Veterinary Clinic. Her dress is wrinkled, her makeup hastily repaired by Jenny, and her hair falling in natural waves around her shoulders. Michael's tuxedo is slightly rumpled from sitting on the floor. Their parents, the minister, Jenny and Kevin, are the only guests. Max, wearing his bow tie collar and sporting a new IV port in his leg, lies contentedly at their feet as they exchange their vows. Dr. Peterson and his staff watch from the doorway, discreetly wiping away tears as the minister pronounces them husband and wife. When Michael kisses the bride, Max manages to lift his head and give a single quiet woof of approval, making everyone laugh through their tears. That evening, instead of dancing at their reception, Sarah and Michael sit on the floor of their apartment with Max between them, sharing takeout Chinese food while still in their wedding clothes. They take turns feeding him small bites of plain chicken that Dr. Peterson had approved. Michael reflects on the day they met at the park, realizing that Max was part of the package deal and how much he's learned about love from Max. Sarah asks what he means, and Michael explains that today's events showed him what real love is, the kind that doesn't count the cost and shows up no matter what. He wants their marriage to be built on that kind of love. Sarah leans over to kiss him, careful not to disturb Max, who has drifted off to sleep between them. She asks when Michael became so wise, and he smiles, nodding at Max, saying that he learned from the best. Max has been showing them how to love unconditionally all along. The journey of love and loss is one that touches every heart. It's a path filled with moments of joy, intertwined with inevitable sorrow. Each step taken together, each memory created, becomes a treasure that we hold on to, even as time moves forward. Adjusted their lives around his needs, taking turns staying home with him when he was too tired to be alone, celebrating the good days with short walks in the park where they'd first met, and comforting him through the harder ones. Through it all, Max maintained his gentle, loving spirit. He still greeted them at the door when they came home, even if he could only wag his tail instead of jumping up. He still insisted on sleeping next to their bed, still begged for treats with those soulful eyes, and still showed his love in countless small ways. On a quiet evening in early spring, almost 6 months after the wedding, Max let them know it was time. He'd had a good day, he'd eaten well, enjoyed some sunshine in the backyard, and even played gently with his favorite toy. But as night fell, he became restless, moving from Sarah to Michael and back again, as if making sure they were both there. They called Dr. Peterson, who came to the house. In their living room, with Max's head cradled in Sarah's lap and Michael's strong hand stroking his back, they said goodbye to the faithful friend who had given them so much. "Thank you," Sarah whispered in Max's ear as he drifted peacefully away. "Thank you for everything, for being my protector, my friend, for leading me to Michael, for teaching us what love really means, and thank you for choosing me all those years ago at the shelter." Later that night, as they looked through photos from their unconventional wedding day, Sarah paused on one that Jenny had captured without them noticing. In it, Sarah and Michael were exchanging their vows, but they weren't looking at each other or the minister. Instead, they were both looking down at Max, who was gazing up at them with pure love in his eyes. A year later, Sarah and Michael stood in front of the Riverside Animal Shelter, the same shelter where Sarah had found Max 13 years earlier. They'd spent months grieving Max's loss, but now they felt ready to open their hearts again. "Are you sure about this?" Michael asked gently, squeezing Sarah's hand. Sarah nodded, touching the locket around her neck that contained a small photo of Max. "He taught us so much about love. The best way to honor his memory is to share that love with another dog who needs a home." Inside, they were greeted by the familiar sounds and smells of a shelter. As they walked past the kennels, Sarah couldn't help but remember the day she'd first seen Max, a skinny, scared German Shepherd puppy who'd stolen her heart with one look from those soulful eyes. At the end of one row, they stopped in the last kennel. A senior golden retriever lay on a worn blanket, grey around the muzzle, watching them with gentle brown eyes. The name card read Duke, age 10. Most people want puppies or young dogs, the shelter worker explained, noticing their interest. Duke's been here for 3 months. His family had to surrender him when they moved into a nursing facility. He's sweet as can be, but his age puts people off. Sarah knelt down by the kennel door. Duke lifted his head, then slowly got to his feet and walked over to her. Through the gate, he pressed his nose against her hand. "He has arthritis in his back legs," the worker continued. "He'll need medication and probably won't be up for long walks." "But he's perfect," Sarah interrupted, looking up at Michael with tears in her eyes. Michael nodded, understanding completely. That evening, Duke settled into their home as if he'd always been there. He found Max's old bed by the fireplace and made it his own, though they bought him a new one. Perhaps he sensed that this had been another dog's special place and felt honored to carry on the tradition. As Sarah and Michael cuddled on the couch, watching Duke sleep peacefully in Max's old spot, Sarah said, "You know, some people thought we were crazy to adopt a senior dog, knowing we'll have less time with him." Michael smiled, pulling her closer. "But we know better, don't we? Max taught us that it's not about the quantity of time, it's about the quality of love. And thanks to him, we learned that sometimes the most beautiful love stories don't follow the perfect plan." Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, watching as Duke dreamed, his paws twitching slightly. Max's last gift to us wasn't just showing us what mattered on our wedding day. It was teaching us that love is worth any sacrifice, any pain. That's why we can open our hearts to Duke now, even knowing we'll have to say goodbye sooner than we'd like. And look what he's already giving us in return. Michael nodded toward Duke, who had woken up and was gazing at them with pure contentment. He's helping us honor Max's memory by continuing the cycle of love. That night, as they got ready for bed, Duke followed them upstairs and settled into the same spot where Max used to sleep, right next to Sarah's side of the bed. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah could have sworn she felt 2 dogs watching over her, one a presence she could touch, and one a beloved memory that would live in her heart forever. Years later, Sarah and Michael would tell their children the story of their wedding day, not as a tale of plans gone wrong, but as a beautiful lesson about love, loyalty, and what truly matters in life. They would show them the photos of that day at the vet clinic, point out the old German shepherd with the bow-tie collar who had changed their lives forever, and explain how sometimes the most precious moments come wrapped in unexpected packages. And through it all, they kept their promise to live the kind of love Max had taught them, unconditional, unwavering, and always ready to put what matters most ahead of any perfect plans. Room. Next to their wedding photo, they hung a simple plaque that read, "Sometimes love means changing your perfect plans for perfection, lies not in the path we intended to take, but in the hearts that guide us home." Below it, Max's collar with its tiny bow tie hung alongside Duke's, symbols of the capacity of the heart to love, to learn, and to grow even through loss and change. And on each anniversary, instead of celebrating with fancy dinners or elaborate parties, Sarah and Michael would visit the animal shelter, bringing donations and spending time with the older dogs who, like Duke, were still waiting for someone to see past their grey muzzles to the love they had to give. Because that was Max's greatest legacy, teaching them that love in all its forms was worth embracing, worth sacrificing for, and most of all, worth sharing, no matter what unexpected forms it might take or how much time you might have together.